everyone. I hope that you're having a good day. I'm getting started here. Just making sure that everything's streaming correctly. So if you're watching this after we've done all of this, just know I'm just trying to make sure we're getting going. So I apologize if this is a little bit boring. All right, wow. So if you were here on Friday, I'm just continuing what we were doing on Friday. If you weren't here on Friday, some of this might seem a little confusing. If you are at all confused, please go to Friday's video because we will need to, because you need to know what we have been doing as opposed to just what I'm doing right now. Because what I'm doing is a continuation of the work we were doing on the walls. So I'm just cutting a few more keystones here. As you can see, I only have a couple left. So I'm just trying to make sure I have enough. These are our keystones. These are our corner blocks down here. And then I'm going to continue. And today we're going to finish up this wall and work on our our door wall and our window wall. So I'm just going to get these marked off to the appropriate width. And as I said in my previous video, I would not recommend, move these up a little bit. I would not recommend using a marker to do this. A pencil is going to give you a much nicer line, a much clearer line. I am just doing this so that it's really a lot easier for you guys to see on the screen. I want to make sure that you guys have good visibility there. So we're going to get our keystones cut. Oh, something's not working right. Give me just a second here. Let's just see. Oh goodness. I hope that we're streaming. Yeah, there we go. Looks like everything's going okay. Okay, so when you get here and you've tuned in, make sure you say hi so I know that you're here. And I'm going to keep going. So, back to what I'm doing. I'm using the width of my popsicle stick to measure out my keystone. Normally, you would have a standard size that you're trying to cut to, but for our purposes, it will just be easier if they're the same width as our popsicle sticks. That's just one of those things that where model making is always going to be a little bit different from... Oh, hi. My cat's in here, sorry. That's just one of those things that's going to be different from when you're making the real thing. But we're going to go ahead and get these cut out. I've started, let me move my camera a little bit. You guys can't really see all that well. Let's see if that makes a difference. A little too much. It's hard to tell because there's a delay for me, so hello. Come on now. So sorry. Let me try that. Come on, adjust. That's probably about as good as it's gonna get. Okay, so I'm gonna keep cutting these out. Also, I would do oh, what was I saying before? Yes, I'm using a scissors for some of this. I did not send a scissors in your kit, but some of this will be easier with a scissors than it would be with your X-Acto blade. Feel free to use a scissors if you have one at home. It doesn't really matter what tool you use to cut with, but I wanted to make sure you had access to X-Acto blades. So here is our wall set up. I've got my horizontal piece here. I've got my two vertical pieces here. I've got my support there. And I've got this one. The next step in what we need to do to build this wall is I need to put a corner block in each of these corners. And I need to use a keystone to bridge these two pieces. So that's what we're going to do next. And then eventually we will add in our support brace. Also note that I have the toggle piece right here, one of our supports right here. I have it above where center would be. That's because these two are joined already at the center, and I want to make sure that I don't mess up that joining. So we're going to go slightly above so that we can join these two pieces together with our keystone. So let's get out our glue because we've already got our pieces cut. All right, so if you have not watched the previous video, one of the things I talked about is the glue is what's going to hold all of this together. So you want to balance how much glue you apply. You don't want it to be so much that you are in trouble and you have your work sliding around, and you don't want it to be so little that you don't have a good hold and it falls apart. So that applies to when you're putting it on your corner block. That applies to when you're putting it on the sticks themselves. You want to be smart about how all of that's working. So also for those of you watching, just let me know if anything sounds weird with the audio. I just want to make sure everything's working out all right. I cannot hear how things are going. So, okay. And we'll take this piece. Also, if you did not watch the previous video, one of the nice things, but also not so nice things about tacky glue is that it takes a little bit to dry. So you have to be careful when you're putting your things together not to mess up what you've already done. Okay. So, because of that, I want to make sure that my corner blocks and my corners are secure. So I'm not going to put the rest of these pieces together until I know that this is dry, because otherwise I'm going to be fighting myself the entire time. So I'm going to move those pieces out of our way, and I will get us started on our door wall. Bring it over here to dry, making sure everything's still lined up the way it needs to be. And we will let the tacky glue do its glue thing. Okay, so when you're making a door wall, I only have 2 verticals currently completed, so I would need to do 2 more, because what you would do is you're going to have your 2 pieces lined up like this, and you would have your top brace go over them. And in between, you would have space for your door wall. Or for, excuse me, not for your door wall, for your door. So we would have another vertical here. Now, there's a couple different ways if you look in your Stagecraft handbook. Sometimes the layout is like I have here, where I just have 1 additional support and the door would go right in here. Sometimes you have, let's say, potentially 2 and 2. So I would have it laid out to be like this, depending on the thickness of the door. Also, sometimes because of the height of the door, let's say I need the height brought down, so I would have something like this. Obviously you would cut it off where it needs to end, but that is generally how you would lay these out. You would need to have a vertical for each. You would need to have the approximate width for what your doorway is, and then you can start to treat it just like you would anything else. So up here we could do something like that to join those together. Stop that. You could also, if you had a bigger corner block, I suppose you could do that way. You would join this piece over here. But the difference, you use corner blocks a lot less in a door wall. And the reason for that is because if I put, let's say, a corner block right there, then how is my door going to open? It's going to catch on that. And we obviously don't want that. So we would need to take a different route to put everything together. So before I do that, I want to show you also how we would lay out a platform. And actually I might do the platform instead, because if I have it, no. I was going to try and show you the picture, but you guys have your books and you can probably whip them out to look at them a lot easier than me going and tracking it down somewhere in my house. But so with platforms, you've got a different setup entirely. Now, normally, if we were to assume that these are 1x4, we would need to use 2x4, and this wouldn't be the right thickness. So we're going to pretend that that this is a 2x4 for your project. You don't need to double up thickness of your platforms unless you really want to. By all means, if you are dedicated to that end and that purpose, go for it. But what you would do is you would have your sticks on edge when you join them together. So your corners would meet instead of coming together, sorry, let me get this in view. Instead of coming together like this, bring it down a little bit more, sorry. There we go. So instead of coming together flat edge to flat edge, they would come together like this when we do our platforms. And what we would do is create a bracing system. So you would have rather, I'm just going to lay these flat for the purposes of me laying this out, but understand that it would be different. That it would all be on edge is what I mean by it would be different. So I would have one support probably every 3 feet. So something like this, or every 2 feet, excuse me. So I'd have it laid out something like that. And then over the top, I would put a hard surface. Now, for our purposes, you can definitely still use the cardstock paper that I gave you. I don't expect you to layer up a ton of popsicle sticks just so that it's tougher. But what you would do then, in the same way that on a flat, we would lay something out like this, and it would be, oh, you can't see it over there, excuse me. And I can't move it because the paint's, or because the glue's drying. But you would, you build up the frame on top of where it should be here, and it would line up like that. Hope that makes sense. If it doesn't quite make sense, definitely I see that nobody has watched the stagecraft video that I made in the shop. Definitely watch that because it will make everything that I'm saying make sense. So that's how you would complete the platform. So yeah, it appears that we've only got one person here right now today. Hello, Ronan. So what I'm going to do, so that if somebody finds this, or when people come back and watch it, they'll be able to get something out of it. I'm going to complete, to the best of my ability, with the tacky glue being kind of fussy, I'm going to complete this wall. And then if you have any questions, please ask them. But most of your questions with regards to the walls and the regards to the platforms are going to be answered in that shop video. It's just all I'm really showing you is how to replicate what I did in that video with popsicle sticks and paper. So let's go ahead and get this wall done, because the platform framing is incredibly easy. There's not a lot of wiggle room really for what you're supposed to do, so I'm not too worried about that. You of course can ask questions at any time, and can shoot me an email. But a lot of this process can be very a little bit tedious, because you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're gluing, and then you're cutting some more, and then you're gluing some more, and so I don't know how productive that is if people aren't watching. So I'm just going to make the best use of our time. So, but yeah. Also, a gentle reminder, because it is the end of the semester is creeping up on us, guys. Like, it is all of a sudden kind of here. Your paper on True West is due May 1st, so don't forget about that and find yourself surprised at the last minute and then try and watch a 2-hour play and write a 3-page paper in 3 hours. Plan ahead. Find a night when you or day, whenever, that you just want to sit down and watch that. Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry, my cat is being special. Ma'am. about that. Just needed to get her back where she needs to be. So we're going to take our final horizontal piece. Also, I doubt you can see it necessarily from our cam. It's not the best camera, but it works. But there is a little bit of a gap between my sticks. That could be I just didn't make a great cut. Don't get overly worried about that. If we were building this in real life, we would want to worry about that. But you know, when you are building with smaller materials, there's less margin for errors, and so you can run into this sort of, oh, I've got a slight overhang, and now my whole thing is not working right. So don't get overstressed about it, because I won't be able to see it in person to even judge that, even if I wanted to. So, all right. Okay, so normally if we were building a flat, I would be very conscious of where I put my brace, because where I put this piece can kind of have an impact on how strong it is. And I am being aware. Normally I would put it in the center, or maybe in some cases I would put two, but because my wall is pretty short, I'm not going to put two, and I don't want it to overlap with my previous keystones, so we're going to put it just above. Okay, so we put that on there. Okay, so I just need to cut one more piece. And what I need to do is, oops, that belongs over there. I need to cut a piece that will help support like that. Now, I could do this a couple of different ways. I could just, and not in normal construction, but for the sake of us building these things out of popsicle sticks, I could just put a brace like that, where I just glue it onto. But that's a little clunky, and we want it to look like everything else. So I'm going to figure out where this will line up so that I can make a nice cut. Just going to draw that out. Okay. This is probably one of those things that would be easier to use your X-Acto blade for. I'm cutting it with the scissors right now for the sake of speed, but I didn't make very great cuts, so just keep that in mind. So then we're going to line it up so that it will hit there and there, and then we would use modified toggles. So in the same way that we modified this piece of popsicle stick, we would do the same with our toggle, so that we don't have some weird overhang on our wall. So we'll get those glued on there, and these aren't too bad, so I'm just going to use them as they are, but sometimes you have to cut pieces off or have it start wider and get thinner. Those are just a couple of ways you can modify your toggle so that it is effective in how you use it for your wall. I'm also running into an issue right now that might have to be remedied by doing some weighted placement like I'm doing, in that my popsicle stick is a little bit warped. So for the sake of wanting to get the glue to set right, I'm just going to put some heavy, and they don't have to be very heavy because like popsicle sticks weigh almost nothing, things. Let's see what else I've got. Well, I've got my big bottle of glue, so I'll just go ahead and use that to to weigh it down while it sets, because you don't want it popping up and getting all messed up. So, and that is almost empty, so I'm going to use my other bottle of glue because it's not quite heavy enough. We'll just switch sides. Alright. And, won't stay. Something heavier. Alright, well, let's use my jar here. That'll work. I save a lot of my jars because they're really good for like paint and things like that. So I just happen to have a ton of those around. But that is the basics of how you build a wall. I can share a picture in the next email I send, since you can't really get a good view of it while it's drying. But that's it. So unless you have any questions, I'm going to call this our class for today. I will go more in depth into the platforms later, but have a good time. Or good time. A good day. Oh my goodness. All right. Bye.